Hello and welcome back to Two Andrews, One Barbell, episode 22.
Low 20s.
Yes, so bit of, I don't even know how to call it.
We recorded 2 episodes, one day after the other, expecting those to be the 2 episodes we put up next. But then we recorded like a post-comp recap, and then we put up one of them.
Yeah.
Now we're doing this one. We probably won't have the other one until during the week.
Yeah.
Excited to get that one to you guys, though.
Yes, very much
Josh.
excited. So we'll post that when we have that. For now, this is episode 22.
Yeah,
Don't
true.
mind what we say in the beginning of whatever the next one is. I think we call it episode 20. Don't mind that.
Like
Okay? It's fine.
episode 45. And we're like, hey guys, episode 21. Yeah. Man, that camera's really close, man. You sure that we're both in there?
Yeah, no, it's a wide lens, brother. So we're trying a new setup. Maybe if you're watching on YouTube, you might say, geez, they look ugly up so close, but we'll find out. That's incentive for all you Spotify listeners to go watch the YouTube.
Yeah.
So, anyway, where are we right now? We are 5 weeks post Euros, Junior Euros, our last junior competition. We did our recap of that. We kind of touched on a little bit what the plan was going to be going forward from there. How have the last few weeks looked for you?
How have the last few weeks looked for me? They kind of flew by.
Yeah.
And have also had less notable experiences than the 5 weeks between the 2 comps.
Yeah.
Like there's
of course,
5 weeks where we had 2
yeah.
comps, one
Worlds
London
and
trip,
Euros, they're
a
the
bunch
last,
of things.
yeah, it's drama.
The last
drama.
while has been just university work, and that's been my main focus.
Yeah. In fairness, like this guy has been AWOL. He's grinding on the master stuff. For anyone who didn't know, Andrew's doing a master's in what is it? He's a smart psychology guy, so that's taken up a lot of his time. Mm-hmm. You're in a deficit?
I am in a deficit.
What's going on?
So this morning weighed in 98.5.
Okay, down from
102.8
Nice.
euros.
Yeah.
So we're a little over 4 kilos down.
Nice.
I had said to myself, I'll do a short tidy up after, but I want to get straight back into lifting. But then once comps were out of sight and you start the deficit, it hits you like, man, like you need to choose one or the other. And Adam was trying to get me not to choose one or the other. He was like, just lose weight for a while and then just gain weight for a while. But for me, I need to know what direction I'm going so that I can accept what I have to do to get there and any difficulties that come with that. I don't want to just lose weight for a while and then have to accept how that feels when I'm lifting and etc. So anyway, I said, okay, well, it won't just be 2 weeks. It'll have to be a minimum of 4 weeks, probably 4 to 8 weeks. So I think I'm going to do another week or 2.
Yeah.
Because I've lost 4 kilos.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I expected, but I've never been this far out of range of being lean.
Okay.
That even though I've lost 4 kilos, I'm smaller. Like my waist is smaller, but I still cannot see my abs. Yeah. And there was a period of my life where I couldn't unsee my abs, no matter how fat I got. So it's weird. Yeah. I'm learning a lot about the deficit and some things that we are sharing.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm going to do is come down to 97, because what I kind of realized is, okay, if the priority isn't to get myself into this position where I'm lean all of the time, and it is powerlifting, all I'm doing is resetting the bulk right now. So I don't need to be shredded. I just need to be in a position where I have a run weight to bulk. So 97 is fine.
Very good point. Because we are powerlifters. Yep. And that is something that I definitely had to grapple with for a little bit of time. Was when I was in the deficit last year and I was coming down from whatever it was, like 113 down to 108. I was consuming a ton of like bodybuilding content, and I was seeing people who were like stage lean, people who were doing like contest preps and stuff. And then I was comparing myself to them. Like I was like, oh, why do I at 108 not look absolutely shredded like this guy who's 74 kilos about to step on stage? Oh my God, I suck, I'm so fat, I'm terrible. But conversely, it wouldn't make any sense for a bodybuilder who is that lean, like they've got the death face, they're about to step on stage, to look at me weighing 115 benching 200 going, oh my God, I'm so weak, I suck so much, blah, blah, blah. Like they're different sports, they're different outcomes that you're trying to achieve. You can't expect if your priority is powerlifting that you are going to be as lean as a bodybuilder. But for some reason, I don't know if it's through social media, I don't know if it's just through in general, like the media and like society, that we're always like pushed these people who are on gear and in incredible shape, that we have this perception of like that's what it means to be in good shape, this unattainable kind of ideal,
Or in some cases attainable,
yeah,
to be shredded,
yeah,
but just then parking the pursuit of powerlifting.
Yeah.
Now, you could argue that you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
And I think we get a little bit consumed by, when I pop onto Instagram and I see the best of the best. I'm seeing Sheffield winners. I'm seeing the best of the best who are lean and who are stronger than me. So in my brain, what I'm consuming is, well, like I can exist in both when they are already lean and progressing, and I'm not lean. So to get lean, I need to.
They are the exception, not the rule.
They are an
kind of
exception,
thing.
not the rule.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. So
Yeah, because that is something I've been faced with more and more, and part of me has gone on a little bit of a deep dive on natural bodybuilding, just to try like unprogram my brain from all of the insanely jacked bit like Sebum and stuff like that. You're looking at him and obviously you want to look like Sebum. Everyone will look like Sebum. Sebum's been on gear for whatever, like over a decade. You know, I'm never going to look like Sebum as a natural lifter. It's not possible. But it's like what my brain has been like hardwired to seek. You're like seeking this thing that is, you can like unequivocally say that's never going to happen. You're not going to look like him unless you start blasting for a decade. And even then, you probably still won't look like him because he is one of one, the best ever. So I've been like, okay, what do the best of the natural people look like? And I've been going down this kind of, again, rabbit hole of natural bodybuilding. The vast majority of people I'm seeing competing in like natural bodybuilding are, when they're shredded, like 70 something kilos. I could not imagine weighing 70 something kilos. And I can't imagine how lifting would feel weighing 70 something kilos. So I've had to kind of come to terms with that discrepancy of, okay, powerlifting is my goal. That's the objective that I want to work towards. I need to just accept, if I wanted to look like these people, which part of you always does, you always want to look like you're in great shape. I would need to sacrifice that significantly to get there. And I don't want to do that. So it's like weighing up the ultimatums, where before it was kind of, I didn't have that information. So I was shooting for two things without actually running the numbers of, is that possible? Now that you see, or there's a little bit more of a framework involved, I'm like, okay, I can put that to the side in pursuit of what is actually important to me. So yeah, that's how I've been looking at things for now. So not needing to be absolutely shredded. It's tough as well, social media. There's a ton of influencers. Again, you don't know who actually is natural, who's not natural. But yeah, from looking at a lot of the natty bodybuilders, it's made me a lot more sus of people out there. But alas, what can you do? So, yes. Another actually interesting thing that I do want to touch on.
the deficit.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're going to say what I'm going to say.
Okay. So there is definitely a tendency on our behalf that when we think of powerlifting training in a deficit, to almost catastrophize it, I guess, in a sense of training is going to be so shit. You're going to feel so weak. Everything's going to be so horrible. Training's going to suck for that period of time that you are in the deficit. I don't think, now having been in the deficit myself for 5 weeks or whatever it is, I don't think it is as bad as it was made out to be. Now, obviously, I've been eating in a surplus for like 3 years. I've been training 2 or 3 years just consistently in a surplus. So I know how good it feels training that. So if cutting is the opposite of that, it must feel so bad. But my experience thus far has been pretty positive. I'm curious for you, because you had quite a bit of resistance to training in the deficit. So what are your thoughts around that?
It's bearable,
Yeah.
but I don't like it.
Why?
Like my top end, and by top end I mean just like top set ability.
Yeah.
Like top end doesn't even mean high percentages because I don't think I could take 90% of my max right now. Maybe on bench, not on squat and deadlift. So my ability to lift heavy weights is just like going down linearly with my body weight, it feels like. And then also it's hard to separate the fact that I did expect that to it happening as well. So my perception of how things feel is inevitably dampened, and no matter what I do, I can't just detrain that or decondition that, or you know, it's almost the premise of CBT undoing that, like, and that would be a challenge. And even though I'm aware of it, I imagine the irreversible, or in the immediate irreversible change that has done to my perception of things. But for the time being, I took like hard doubles with 230 on squat and deadlift this week. That's not fun when I've done like 30 plus more, for doubles or more. So it's fine. It's bearable when I remind myself that not only is it temporary, but it's aiding in the goal. But I couldn't do it for a long period of time. Unless I parked the ambition to pursue increased SPD.
So I would say my experience has been different to that. I was watching a video on it yesterday or the day before, talking about kind of when to structure, when to plan, when to approach deficits for powerlifting, how to best manage it. And I think I have been putting in place everything that was talked about in that video, where post-comp, kind of off-season-ish time where there's no competitions on the horizon, I would say that is probably the best time to approach a deficit, rather than the other way around. If you were dieting into, say, like a peak for a competition, where things are going to be getting really heavy, you probably don't want to be in energy restriction for that. So post-comp, there's nothing really coming up. There's no time pressure. And one of the other benefits of that is, say, coming out of like a competition prep, your objective strength, would you call that? Like your ability to express strength on the top end is probably quite high. And your ability to express strength, say, on like your rep work or your volume work, it's probably like diminished a little bit as you were peaking. So that is kind of the avenue that I have been putting a lot of effort into, and I think you can almost see gains in that regard, and I have done. I hit PBs on my 7s on squat, down 7 kilo body weight. I hit a PB on my 7s for bench, again down 7 kilos body weight. So that relationship of your fitness being quite low coming out the back of a comp prep, it's low hanging fruit where you can make improvements there despite being in energy restriction. That's the way that I have been looking at it, and that's essentially been what has happened over the last 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it's been. It's kind of, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, is like, rather than being on the defensive with the deficit of just trying to hold on to whatever gains I have, or just trying to like limit any of the damage, it has been like offensive, the approach, like attacking the deficit and trying to make progress where I can. And pretty cool that I have been able to do so, say, on those volume sets. So that's kind of how it has been for me. I'm down again like a significant amount of body weight, but I have the sense of progression, and it's almost, maybe it's like false progression. You're just finding an avenue that you haven't like expressed in a while. So cashing in on some gains that you have there, rather than any real strength that I'm building, probably. But yeah, that has been the approach for myself, and it's been working quite well. Now, inevitably, if you're in a deficit for whatever, let's say 12, 16 weeks, if you're losing like 10+% of your body weight, you're going to start feeling it. Now, on the top end, say my squat singles and my like deadlift singles, I don't feel super strong. But in general, I don't feel super strong on the top end just regularly throughout the year after a competition prep. I wouldn't feel that amazing. I often kind of remark that about my squat. I will, for most of the year, my squat singles, I'll be taking hard 250, 260, 270 singles. And then in a peak or a comp rep where I reduce a lot of the volumes that I'm handling, like a lot of the heavy rep work, I pull back a lot of the accessory work that I'm doing, I add like 30, 40 kilos to the loads I'm handling on squat. So for example, this week 4, I squatted 241 kilos for 7, but my top single was 270 and it was a hard 270, like it felt quite heavy. But in general, even if I wasn't in a deficit, the top end does often feel kind of stinky after a comp prep. Same with deadlift. Top single doesn't feel amazing, but I hit 270 for a 3x4, which is also a volume PB. So yeah, the top end doesn't feel great, but it often doesn't until I am peaking. And that's kind of similar to we were talking about, say, the comparison between like powerlifting and bodybuilding and the phase of training that you're in. It would be unfair to make those comparisons. When you are in a block of doing 7s, it would be unfair to compare your top end to a block where you are peaking and you've had however much momentum behind you building up to make you as strong as possible for one rep. So it would, again, be illogical, I would say, for myself to look at a hard 270 single and be like, oh, you suck, you're weaker, you've regressed however much. You squatted 310 plus like a month or 2 months ago, and now 270 is rocking you. Oh, you're shit, brother. It would be unfair. It wouldn't make sense for me to compare like my absolute peak strength where all of my resources were going into that, as opposed to a phase where I'm doing a significant amount of volume work and accessory work. So,
and you had more resources. So I think what you're doing is very clever. We spoke to Irish Nationals on the weekend, and we spoke to Jack Thornton, and he has lost a bunch of weight. He's looking very trim, very presentable, very aesthetic. Don't know how many more adjectives I need to use here. You
handsome,
get the picture.
beautiful, brilliant,
handsome,
scintillating.
attractive, drool-worthy. But he said he hasn't been focusing on powerlifting. He's just been doing, and he kind of said, oh, I've just been doing like SSB, close grip bench, RDLs. What that sounded like, though, and we agreed with him, is that he's just been doing what Andrew's doing to like a slightly less specific degree, in that he's squatting, benching, and deadlifting, but in manners that he doesn't have to face the difference in strength expression as head on, as explicitly.
It's new ways to win. It's new avenues to find that progress in.
Yeah.
If it's something you haven't trained before, you're able to push that and see some progress there, as opposed to trying to bang your head against the wall with heavy singles of SPD, where you will notice a stark contrast in your ability. So yeah, that is a clever approach, I would say.
It is a clever approach. So I feel like there isn't a disagreement here, rather a better framing on your end of the same experience. So I'll have a look. It's hard because on the other end you could just say, sure, if you know it doesn't matter, you should just be able to do whatever and it won't matter. Like, you shouldn't be so taking it so personally and subjectively, and be more objective, and you just squat, bench, deadlift and don't even think about it, even if they feel worse. But that's tough.
It is hard. We're not robots. So.
Yeah. So I imagine I'll do something like that for the coming 3 to 4 weeks of training, where the deficit is both in, like, I'm actively in a deficit, and then I imagine the week or two after my calories won't be too high either. I don't want to just flick the switch from 2,500 calories to 5,000. I want to talk about that in a sec.
Yeah.
But that would also be crazy. My toilet would blow up. So here's something though, and here's something Andrew and I have experienced and discussed. Not to harp on about the deficit, and this could be the last thing.
I think it is a good topic though. It is
a good topic
because it's.
I just hate it.
We have. Because in fairness, we have harped on so much about the surplus and the benefit of the surplus.
True.
But they're like yin and yang.
Much cooler,
It was funny, like I only acknowledged it recently, like a week or two ago, where it is an essential part of this whole training process that we do. But we have been so entrenched in the surplus and gaining and maximizing the amount of progress that we can make for the past few years that I haven't even had to have much experience being in a deficit. This whole other side of the coin when it comes to training. So yeah, it is a necessary part, because if you do want to be doing this for a decade, you're not going to be in a surplus for a decade, or you could be, but you probably don't want to be for health reasons, for aesthetic purposes, for all the rest of it. So this is a necessary part of the process.
So, Andrew and I both experienced, and I'll say my end and pretty much agree here, is I wasn't tracking my calories, but anytime I did, I was 4.5, 5, and then on top of those like regular eating habits, I was adding meals and snacks on different days. Like if one of my friends works in a restaurant down the road, so he'd bring me like a chicken burger when I'd already eaten everything I had for the day, and I ate pretty consistently. So there were days where I was definitely going 5+, let's just say. I expected a reduction of like 1,000 calories to yield huge loss of body fat.
Yeah.
Because in my head I was thinking, okay, well, I'm not really gaining right now. I'm like maintaining that like 102.5 range at like 5,000. So if I ate 3,500, man,
You're
I'm gonna be
shredded in no
shredded. No, didn't happen. Didn't happen in the slightest. And I was surprised by how little calories I needed to eat to move the needle.
Yeah.
There's a couple things with this, and we'll talk about a couple things that you could troubleshoot as well. But for the most part, I was expecting 3.5, and then 3,000. I'd be 93 in no time, and I could just restart the bulk. I'm at 2,500 and been trickling down. Like the first 2 kilos fall off, as I imagine most people can relate to. I'd say that's almost like a food weight thing, a water weight thing. That's a like less food in your gut thing, and less water retention. And then maybe the first kilo comes off pretty fast of body fat, but then thereafter, I was like, oh fuck, like I'm eating way less here, and I've cut out so many things. So then I started to like knuckle in. So I've been on 2,500. You experienced similar?
Yeah. So I thankfully have been tracking for a considerable amount of time. I think like on my MyFitnessPal, like the last like 200 days or something have all been tracked. So I have a lot of data to look back on, and pretty accurate data, I would say, or as accurate as can be. And I would eat pretty similarly between like 4.5 and 5,000. That would be kind of where I would sit, a little bit above 5,000, and I would be gaining weight at, let's say, like 0.5% average body weight increase week on week on week. So if we guess like 4,500, that was maintenance. I thought similarly, if I was on say 3.5k, that would be like a quick drop off, and I'd be in the deficit for maybe like 6 to 8 weeks, and I'd get quite lean. Now, in fairness, the rate of loss that I have experienced is quite good. I'm down about 7 kilos in 5 weeks or so, whatever it is, with the first couple of kilos being food weight, water weight. The 117 that I did weigh in competition as well, bit of an inflated weigh, and I weighed in at like 1 p.m. and I'd eaten food and drank water and whatnot. So I thought 3.5k, it's going to fly off. Did for a couple of weeks, and then before I knew it, I was just maintaining. I maintained for probably like 10 to 14 days at the same body weight on 3,500 calories. From that, I was like, no way, I have to drop this further. This is where it comes into the troubleshooting process. So I looked at how have my activity levels been, because they would be the kind of the two sliders that you can adjust when we're talking about changes to like body composition, body weight. So my food, I had been bringing that down, but I hadn't really been paying too much attention to my activity. Now I wear this Fitbit and that tracks your steps and whatnot, but I hadn't even synced it to my phone for however long. I use it mainly as like a timer or stopwatch in the gym. Yeah, exactly. So people think I'm health conscious. And then they see my belly and they go, No, I'll use it as like a timer in the gym. If I'm doing accessories and stuff, I'll put it as like a 90-second timer or something. when I'm not yapping to everyone in the gym.
It's like a timer just runs and runs and runs.
Yeah. So I started looking at my activity and I realized that I had been doing maybe like 5,000 or 6,000 steps a day. And then I was like, okay, I don't want to bring my food down much lower. Let me increase the amount of activity that I'm doing. Steps are like they're like a cheat code. You don't want to, well, for me anyway, I don't want to be doing a block of 20 minutes of like planned cardio 3 times a week. Now I can add that in, but I don't want to.
And when would you even do that?
After a session, after like a lower body
Mike
session.
said that's not good.
So I don't want to do that. Whereas steps are, you're just going about your daily business. You're doing real life stuff. And then you look back at the end of the day and you go, oh shit, I'm going to be skinnier tomorrow. So I was like, okay, I'll just make sure that I walk the dog for an extra 20 minutes in the evening. I'll walk right around the green, go back home, takes 20, 30 minutes. Started doing that, and my activity was consistently around about 10,000 steps. Almost immediately, I saw the correlation in drop in body weight from there. Now, I was trying to find more information on this to see if I could find maybe like actual numbers or a framework to work within of hypothetically for someone who weighs X amount of kilos. Is there a way to correlate how many calories are burned with your daily activity? Now, we found some stuff, God knows how accurate it is, but it was like, for example, a 100 kilo person. If they are doing 5,000 steps a day, that might burn 300 additional calories through that activity. If they're doing 10,000 steps a day, that might burn 600 calories. So 300 extra calories per 5,000 steps that they were doing. That's pretty significant. That's going to be the difference between you being at maintenance or in a considerable deficit. So that has been the focus. Make sure my steps are around 10K if I can. And now I'm eating around 3,000 calories. And my body weight is dropping at about 1% average body weight per week. So a little bit over a kilo a week, which is a fast rate to lose weight. But if you consider I'm 117 kilos, and a lot of that is probably fat. Like the higher body fat percentage that you can probably be a little bit more aggressive.
Oh,
if you're a 74 kilo guy and you're like fucking 10, 11, 12% body fat already.
Man, if
maybe you
you're
don't
losing 7 kilos, you're in the hospital, bro.
Yeah, you don't want to be doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, performance has been great, evidently hitting PBs and stuff. Not feeling hungry, that's been one of the best things. I actually feel as though I've gained a lot of time back in the day because I'm not having to spend as much time cooking food, preparing, like eating. That's been great for just general productivity. Feeling lighter, feeling a little bit more energized because I'm not so sluggish, haven't eaten so much food. So in general, it's been wins across the board, I would say, with the deficit so far. Again, caveat, only 5 weeks in. If you're doing this for 16 weeks, I would say in general, probably after like 12 weeks, you might start feeling the implications of it. Or again, if I heard someone throw out like 8% of your body weight, if you lose like 8%, that's generally when you would start to feel the differences. The leverages are changing quite a bit. Now, again, I don't know how much stock to put in that, but I would say, yeah, if you're losing 8 to 10% of your body weight, you're probably going to start feeling it. That's probably the biggest change that I've felt, is like being caught between like belt sizes, and things feel a lot like heavier and slower. And then I'm like, oh, well, I should probably tighten my belt a notch. And then I do that, and then it feels better again. So I would say the changing leverages is probably one of the more significant things, because again, if you're doing everything else right, you're eating enough protein, you're sleeping enough, you're still training hard, giving your body a reason to preserve the muscle, and you're hanging on to as much muscle as you can, while again, you're in energy restriction, you might not have as much energy within the training session itself. If you are maintaining as much muscle mass as possible, you're probably able to express a similar amount of strength. The changing leverages and the slight adjustments to technique will probably lead to the bigger variances in how stuff feels. But overall, provided you're doing everything else again, eating enough protein, sleeping enough, still training hard to give yourself a reason to not just shed the muscle that you have, you should be fine for the most part.
I will say that as much as I don't love the deficit, like I would rather be, I prefer my lifestyle when I'm eating whatever I want, as much as I want. Don't have to think about it and yada yada. And then how that feels when I'm lifting. Sure, that based on my priorities right now, that is what I would prefer to be doing. I do believe, however, that if I wasn't powerlifting focused, I would be okay to get like to the bone shredded. Like diet wise, as much as I prefer eating intuitively and a lot of food and the foods that I can then eat when my calories are up. Like I forgot how high calories chicken thighs were. I was wondering where
I know. I've been on the chicken breast instead of the chicken thigh, and that has been depressing.
And it was like, it's so depressing. I was like, why is that 900 calories already? And oh shit. But I do believe that because I do like to go all in on things.
Yeah.
If as long as the like negative repercussion of like lifting less wasn't there, man, I could get ab veins if I.
You have spent a significant amount of time lean. I almost want to like tee you up to make a clip so that you can post the, because he sent me some videos of whatever it was, 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, shred and jacked and shredded.
I sent you some videos 3-4 years ago, shredded.
Yeah.
And then I sent you some pictures from years before that, like when I was young, I think maybe 16, ab veins, like veins coming up the lower abs, down from like my pecs, down my thing, down my neck. Man, yeah, I've been lean before. And it's not that bad. Now, obviously, at the time, it was like an accidental byproduct of not having been in another position. I had gotten very lean, then I was putting on muscle very slowly, or as quick as I was, while remaining very lean. I was still running a lot and whatever. So my activity was really high. Whereas now, there is a sense of like letting go of a identity and experience for something else. But could do it diet wise and lifestyle wise. I'm okay with saying no to things. Just my
See, that's what I was saying. I think you're almost in the perfect position now to do a big dig and like a grand reset, because we're at the very beginning of the open. If you dig a little bit deeper than say 97, you have a ginormous runway ahead. Now, alternatively, you don't have to do that either. You go to 97 and you go up, you come down, you go up, you come down, and each time you're going to have a little bit more muscle and then a little bit less fat by each reset that you do of those recomps. But yeah, I would say going from junior into the open, all of the pressure is off almost competition-wise. That's probably if I could imagine the most ideal time ever to do it, I would say that is it. Where you don't have any pressure to perform. Now, obviously, it's more fun being in a surplus and feeling like you're stronger every week, every session. But yeah, I would say if you can, I was even gonna refer to it as like if you can eat shit for like a certain period of time. But I don't even think it needs to be that, you know? I think if you can frame it again in the way where you are like, it is a positive thing. And look, again, trying to identify all of the potential positive outcomes of doing this, of giving yourself the longer runway, of taking enjoyment and fulfillment out of seeing the scale going down, seeing those body composition changes, of potentially even say like the point scores of like your dots or your GL points or whatever it is, of that increasing, like your relative strength increasing. Yeah, I think there is a lot of good stuff that comes along with
relative strength. You know, the output is going down as well. But no, you are right, and I might try it. I'll weigh it up, because it's not something that you can just flop back into. It's not like in 6 weeks into the bulk, I'm going to say, I'll dig a bit deeper. That's not what I want to do. I want to be in one or the other, and I'm fine with that. I just would have to figure out a way to be okay with how SBD feels for that period. Because I am contending with, and the reason I haven't fully committed to a big dig is because as much as...
A big what?
A big dig. Oh, God. You're disgusting,
man, you've committed to a few of them in your time, I think.
Man. Yeah, not with you, bro. Yeah, as... You're throwing me off now.
Yeah, all you can think about is big digs.
Shows what, we were just talking about free association before this, about first thing that comes to mind when you hear something, and obviously that's the first thing that came to mind for you. Anyway, yeah, I'll weigh it up. The reason I haven't committed to that is because I really want to get back in and progressing and talking about competing and stuff. So I don't know. Because if I was to cut for, instead of 4 weeks, make it like 10 weeks, 12 weeks, I am, as much as I'm setting up the runway for the next few years, in the next 6 months, I can't talk about competing at all. You know?
Potentially, yeah. I fucking threw myself as well. I had such a good thing to say,
Yeah.
and now all I can think about is
It happens, man. Sometimes I'm listening to you talk and I'm like planning the next thing I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And then you say one thing and
it
like,
just it throws you.
yeah, I get lost.
So anyway, yeah, deficit, fucking stuff like that. I had something so good, but it's gone. It'll probably come back to me like way later, and it just won't be relevant to say it anymore. But yeah, I think it can be fine. I think it is a good time for you to consider doing it now.
I am considering it, and I think it could be okay.
It's what I was gonna do. Like, I was planning to come down to between 105 and 100 kilos.
Yeah.
That was what I was like committed to. That's what the plan was after junior Euros. I was gonna lose like 20 kilos, and to be honest, I'm on track to still do that. But, and I got a lot of questions online, like replies on my stories and whatnot. And we put up a question box. We'll answer some of those questions later in this episode. A lot of the questions are kind of around 105 and what the plan is. That was going to be the plan. I had committed to being under 105. But whenever someone asked me, I didn't say that. Like, I didn't commit myself to that position. Kind of the stance that I took was we would see what happened at national championships. Now, national championships was last weekend. The 120s competed, and congratulations to everyone. It ended up being the case that I'm the only person who has hit the Open 120 qualifying standard. So I received an invitation to do Open European Championships as a 120. So I think that has kind of made the decision for me. My next competition is going to still be under 120 kilos. Now, how heavy will I be under 120? I still don't really know. We were kind of weighing up the potential options available in that scenario. Part of me, a large part of me, and I sent you a lengthy voice message on this, had resistance to the idea because I'd committed myself. In my brain, I was fully committed to going down below 105. I had spent a number of years gaining weight, building more muscle, putting on more body fat, but convincing myself and telling myself it's only temporary. It's only temporary that I'm going to have this body fat, because after the juniors, I'm coming back down, I'm losing it all. That had been what was going to happen in my mind the whole time, all of the years. That's what kept me kind of chipping away through it. I was so set on doing that. And then this one competition invite coming through swayed my opinion and swayed the direction that I was going to go. And I had resistance to it, being like, how... I felt as though I was almost like sucked in for one more comp, just do one more comp. And I was like, how long will that keep going on for? That, oh, but the next comp you've qualified as a 120 again. Oh, so just one more comp. And then it ends up being this never-ending cycle of just one more at 120 and not actually coming down to 105. And it's no longer just a temporary thing. That is now the direction that I've chosen. That's the path that I've committed to. So I had resistance to that in general. I'm finally starting to see the body composition changes that I wanted to see. I'm finally revealing the muscle that I've built over all these numbers of years. I'm seeing abs again. I'm seeing some muscle separation in my shoulders, my arms. And now there is an element of pressure to go back up in body weight again if I want to be competitive in the Open 120s. So I'm not fully decided of how far I will continue coming down in the deficit. It might be another 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks. I don't know. When I get to like 108, I think I'll decide. What I'm leaning most towards at the moment is at the end of November, I think I will stop the deficit regardless. Open European Championships is the end of March, so that would leave me about like 3-4 months to start gaining again. And I believe the initial phase will be quite good because I feel kind of flat now. I feel flat, softer, but still carrying body fat. So you just kind of feel like skinnier but still flabby. So it's not the best in terms of body composition. But say if I increase calories again, that's where you start to fill out, and it's almost you're at a lower body fat, but your muscles are looking bigger again. So I imagine there will be that phase for the initial couple of months. The amount of body fat gain will be relatively small, relatively slow. So that's what I think will happen. I will transition out, do more bodybuilding, do more accessory focused training for a while. I might not even like peak. That's what I'm thinking at the moment. I might not even like run a peak for European Championships. First competition in the open, there's not really that much pressure to be competitive anyway. I'll likely be middle of the pack, so on. Maybe I'll just continue doing bodybuilding because I know last year when I had dropped body weight, I dropped down to 108. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to start eating more, but I wasn't tracking. I wasn't tracking accurately. And I was like, okay, I'm going to transition into surplus. Intuitively, I'm eating more food. Weighed myself 2 months later. I'm like 2 months out from junior nationals. And I was still 108 and a half or something. So then I did like 1 4-week block of kind of volume and bodybuilding stuff where I was actually eating in a surplus. And then I was doing a peaking block when you're pulling all that stuff back again. So by junior nationals, I'd kind of spent like 5-6 months not really gaining anything. And my total reflected that. I didn't really get any stronger in that period of time. So having learned that and having the experience from that, I will make sure that I am tracking consistently as I transition from deficit to a little bit of maintenance to a surplus again. Try avail of as much time as possible actually gaining, building more muscle. And then I kind of don't even want to run a peak. I don't think I want to be that like super invested in the competition itself. The main thing that attracts me to it is it would be my 10th international in total. It would mean that I have competed as a sub-junior, a junior, and an open lifter, which is really cool internationally. I wanted to say I'm the first person who has done that, although you technically have beat me to it because you did Western European Championships, but Westerns is a fake company, so
Say that to Addy.
yeah, fuck that. Well, they almost didn't give him his record because it's a fake comp.
Really?
Yeah, there was all the drama for like 2 weeks where they're like, is it a record? Is it not a record? Is it a record? And then
As in
eventually,
they didn't know if you could break a world record on it.
yeah, at Westerns. And then eventually they said, yeah, but a little bit of a fake. No, it's become more a higher level comp in recent years. So you have technically represented the sub-junior, junior, and open.
Am I the only one?
Yeah, yeah. But
cool.
I'll be the first one selected as a true. No.
That's pretty cool, man. No, you can put it into open powerlifting however you want to make it seem like that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, so that will be cool, and it's in Spain, very cool.
Yeah.
And it's the week of my birthday, so super cool. There's a lot of things attracting me to that competition. Then Open Worlds in Germany in June or July. Doesn't really interest me as much. Euros would be more interesting. Now, I'm not going to make a decision now if I will or won't do it. It's still so many months away. But one of the things that is priority and I do want to do is coach internationally. Junior Worlds, Costa Rica. Want to go to that one.
God.
We want to go to that one.
It's pretty far away.
But that's what I mean. If we're going over to Sheffield, going to Spain, going to Germany, and going to Costa Rica, expensive. So I would probably sooner turn down Open Worlds to compete myself to coach internationally. But again, these are all hypotheticals that I'm throwing out there. Anyway, long and the short of it is I would rather spend more time bodybuilding and gaining and not peaking and trying to cash in on my absolute strength. This was an analogy that we talked about a little bit before, leading into the junior internationals just gone. And it was, okay, let me set the scene. If you imagine you're at like an Olympic diving pool And in the Olympics, they have like I'm going to make it up, I don't know what the actual increments are, but like a 3-meter springboard, a 10-meter springboard, and then like a 15-meter springboard. The way that I conceptualize it is when you have spent a ton of time building and making those investments, putting money in the bank, when you're doing these like volume phases, you're pushing your accessories like crazy, you're building more muscle, you're getting heavier. They're all like deposits. To me, that's like climbing up higher on the ladders on the springboard. When you then like peak and taper and go to like max out, that is cashing in. That's making that withdrawal. That's diving off the diving board. But the more deposits that you have made, the higher you've climbed up, the more extravagant that dive down is. You can do all sorts of fancy tricks and whatever. When you're jumping off that 15-meter springboard, you've amassed all of this period of time building. You then have a big, huge cash in. What it felt like happened leading into those junior comps is I'd spent probably 4 months building. 1 month out from Junior Worlds, I did a big cash in and I hit like huge lifetime PBs. So I squatted 700 pounds, I benched 200 kilos, I pulled 340. That was me climbing to the top of the springboard and diving in. I then had 4 weeks to go to Junior Worlds. I didn't even have time to climb the 3-meter springboard. I just climbed out. Yeah, I got to the edge of the pool and then I was diving back in again. So the amount that I could express was nothing almost. I had nothing to show for that 4-week peak. I had already cashed in and hit the big numbers in the month prior. So that had happened. Junior Worlds was below those numbers. Then we had the same thing 5 weeks to go to Junior European Championships. Same thing. It felt like I had just got out of the pool. Couldn't even climb to the 3-meter springboard. I was just diving straight back in again. That expression of strength, another expression of strength, and then another one again. There was no building between that. So now I want to spend some time building. I want to climb that springboard. I want to get to the very top. I want to make a ton of deposits so that the next time that I cash in, there's something big to show for it. I think that's a very good analogy. And I've used that so many times to like visualize the ebbs and flows of training.
I guess something that I hear on a more consistent basis from other people is then like how often you should compete and where do you draw the line then from not just saying, well, why don't you just deposit for 2 years without cashing in?
You could. But I almost feel like, I was going to say I almost feel like we could, but you get the itch. Like you just want to do it. You want, that's the really fun bit, you know?
Yeah.
Now you could, if you had the willpower to say, I'm going to delay that satisfaction for 2 years so I have the biggest payoff. I'm sure you could and you would get an insane payoff. But most people, to stay engaged with the process, probably need that more frequently. Yeah. So yeah, I would say in terms of like how often you should compete, maybe a couple of times a year. So you are still getting that, because like after you've competed or after you've been to a competition and watched it, it stokes the fire, you know. It gets you like super motivated again, and then you can have like a really productive stint of training. You put your nose to the grindstone or whatever the fuck they say, and you start building. But then you need that every few months, that cash in, that reward for the work that you've put in. Now, if you have the willpower to delay that for a long time, you will probably get a super high payoff from it. But most people need, especially in like nowadays where kind of those dopamine hits are so frequent, it's a little bit harder to maybe commit to delaying that gratification or satisfaction. Yeah, I would say if I can build for 6-9 months, ooh, that'd be crazy. We're looking at high 8s, mid-high 8s, 900. I would like that.
I would like that as well.
Yeah. And that's another thing actually on the topic of, say, like going to a competition and seeing that and being around that and how that motivates you. That happened at national championships for sure. When I was watching the 120s, I didn't know how I would feel watching it. And I thought I could be kind of like stoic, just be there, see what happens. Oh, I could feel the ego flaring up. Oh, the ego was flaring. on the inside. I hope I didn't see my fucking booing people from the crowd. Boo, you suck. No, there was none of that. But I could feel like that ego is the best way that I can describe it. Just kind of that competitive edge as I was watching people get close to my numbers. I was like, I want to get back out there and push that standard higher for myself. I could feel that coming, but I haven't had that in a long time, I would say. And I'm between two minds on how to feel about that. Because the next day, I was like, okay, thankfully I'm a day removed from that now. I can bring it back down. I felt like a dog on like the end of a leash. I was, that's how I felt in the moment. I was like, let me at him. I want to get back out there. I want to show him. The next day I was like, okay, but reel that back in. I don't know. I don't know where I stand on like ego and its role and when it can be productive and when it can potentially be harmful. For myself, I think I feel a lot better if the decisions that I'm making and the direction that I'm heading is not influenced by ego. And I'm not competing just to be better than someone else. If that is like my motivation for competing, it's like it's coming from like a negative, it's like it has negative energy to it. I'd much prefer if I am just competing because I love the process. I love training hard. I love the journey. I love having the mountain to climb. I just want to push myself to see what I'm capable of. And that has been the mindset for my competing for a number of years now. But now that I'm going into another category where it is perhaps more competitive, even domestically, like within Ireland, there's that feeling of, oh shit, there's people who are quite close to me. I need to get ahead. The week of training post nationals, when I did have that little bit of ego flaring up, was so productive though. I had it was week 4 of my block, and that's where I was hitting these volume PBs. I had that extra little bit of fire. I don't know where I stand because it can be productive. It can spur you on to potentially work a little bit harder, but I just don't think it's a sustainable or a healthy place to draw a lot of your motivation from. So I've tried to like consciously override it and be like, none of that stuff is important. Let's recenter ourselves as to the reason why we are competing or doing any of this in the first place. And that has been what I'm doing, and I feel much calmer with my approach to it. But I found the ego flaring up, and I was like, I haven't really felt this in a while. Like that competitive spirit. Ego is the enemy or something like that. Anyway, we put it to the side. We're cool, calm, collected. We're stoic. We're loving. We're friendly. That's the approach.
Yeah, I imagine the source of motivation being wanting to beat other people is so weak and short-lived.
Yeah.
You can just acknowledge it and see that it happened because it was relevant at the time. Then it becomes so irrelevant 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it feeds into that. I don't even want to put a label on it as like unhealthy or anything, but when I didn't enjoy training, that was one of my sources of motivation. Back in the day where I would write up everyone's name on the board and all the nominations and all the people ahead of me, and I'd always be looking at the people who were better than me, and I'd be like, I want to beat them. I want to be better than them because for some reason that will make me feel better about myself. That was kind of this thought process that I had. And it made me not enjoy training. It made me not enjoy competing. It was like I was doing it for all the wrong reasons. It didn't feel good. That's what I mean by like it's coming from like that negative place. It just doesn't feel good. Like I don't feel good inside my head if that's what I'm trying to derive my motivation from. So yeah, noticing it, being like, why do I feel this way? And then we get back to work with what we know is good, feels good, and keeps me invested in the process for the long term. So yeah, it was interesting though. It was interesting having that experience. Yeah, what else is going on? Anyway, besides nationals, we what?
I was going to say we have a couple of questions that we can answer as well.
Yeah. Before that, we have started a new
Endeavour.
endeavor.
We have indeed.
How would you explain it?
We are doing talks in schools. So we did our first one last week. Was
Yeah.
that last Friday?
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks ago?
Last Friday, I think.
Yeah, it was last Friday. So we're going to be going to a few more schools. We've been organising, we've been planning.
We have like 6 more schools in the pipeline
Yeah.
that are lined up to go. Crazy.
It's pretty cool. It's fun.
How? It's not even something I would have considered, or like a pathway or an avenue that I would have had any ambition to go down. But it just feels right or something. It just feels like the right thing to do. So the opportunity presented itself, but the amount of, from that first school that we did, the amount of opportunities that have arisen from then on is crazy. And it just feels like it's like a good thing that we're doing.
Altruistic, perhaps, is
Yeah.
a good word.
Yeah.
It just feels like you said, the right thing to do. It feels like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need anything back from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's enough to know that I'm doing it. That makes me
Yeah.
happy. Yeah.
Yeah, like, so to give some context, essentially the way that we have presented the talk is, okay, and we had a conversation about this. I almost feel weird wording it this way, but we are giving insight into competing at a high level, an elite level. Like that's the bit that I don't know why I have some internal resistance to that phrasing, but we're giving insight into competing at a high level. We've both competed internationally for the last 5-6 years. And the most important or valuable lessons that we have learned throughout that journey. And we have done our best to make those lessons widely applicable to, say, academics or other extracurricular activities that the students may do. It's not just specific to powerlifting, but we are talking about it through the lens of lifting and our experiences, promoting powerlifting as well, letting the kids know what it is, that it's a potential avenue or sport that they could take up. Yeah, it's the reason that I say I have like that resistance to calling it like an elite level in sport is, I don't know if we have like, or maybe it's just me, the tendency to minimize it a little bit. Like when I think of myself competing at, say, world or European championships, I don't necessarily look at myself like I'm an elite athlete or I'm an international level athlete, stuff like that. To me, it's just like, oh yeah, it's just competition. It's just what I do. It's what I've done for a number of years. But when I come back home and I speak to family members, friends that are not involved in the world of powerlifting, extended family, when you talk about what you've done and the competition you're at, the reception I get is always really good. And I almost look at it like it's over the top or they're exaggerating what it is. But I do think it is probably necessary for us to acknowledge that we're in a unique position, that not a lot of people in powerlifting will get the opportunity to compete internationally at a world championships or European championships, which ties into one of the questions later. But yeah, on the note of the school talks, very proud to be involved in that and to try our best to impart some sort of positive influence on a younger generation, potentially bring some people into powerlifting. From the first talk that we did, I had like 5 people DM me on Instagram afterwards being like, hey, you were in my school, just wondering if you could give me advice on how to start squatting and deadlifting. I don't know how to do it. Or what foods should I be eating to build more muscle? And I would just send on any and all help and resources that I could from there. That is just like a good feeling. And again, there's nothing that I need in return from that. That alone is, and that maybe it touches on another broader topic of, I almost enjoy that because it makes me feel good. So it could almost be selfish in the sense that doing that makes me feel good within myself, but like, is that selfless or is it selfish? Because you're giving this information, you're doing this talk, you're putting in this work to try to do something good for other people, but you're doing that because it makes you feel good in the process. So anyway, that's a whole other mental exercise for you to do in your own time.
No, I don't think that's selfish. I think it's nice that it's something that makes you happy as well.
Yeah.
But you're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And that is the payment is knowing that I'm giving I'm being that positive influence and giving this source of everything, of knowledge, of experience, of, you know, modeling of a life that is attainable, accessible, and healthy, and all these things. There's a lot of things that I like, and I'm proud of us for doing and imparting and sharing.
Yeah.
Looking forward to doing more. It's mad, I would have loved that at that age as well.
That's
obviously
what I
because
think.
we were into lifting, but it's cool. And I always loved the talks from people who were not that far in age from us as well. Obviously, if someone had something to say at 40, 50, 60 years old, it's whatever. But when someone felt like they were just like older brother age.
Almost there. Like,
like
so relatable.
so relatable. They know what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Like, they go through similar experiences, or they just did.
Yeah.
You know, they're not generations apart. I think that's cool as well.
Yeah, I often think that, like, I wish I could put myself back when I was 16 and see myself now. Like, what would I think of myself? I would think I'm a pretty cool guy, I reckon. Like, even us, two big burly tattooed guys going into a school. I think that's if I saw people like that, I'd be like, I wonder what they have to say. And maybe that's just my own bias of what I'm interested in, obviously, because
here's something as well. Powerlifting doesn't have a very public representation. Now, it does to an extent. Like
you
Instagram,
might vaguely have seen something on Instagram.
Maybe, but even then, it's like such a range. Usually, like, absurdity does well on Instagram.
You likely would see, say, like a kid pulling on a deadlift bar with straps and bumper plates. People would have sooner seen that than an actual, like, IPF competition. So they would probably associate it with, like, meme lifts.
Or man, just like Eddie Hall pulling 500. That's like the only thing. So it's not very publicly known. Of course, then when you go more specific and closer to it, like when you enter the gym sphere, the fitness sphere, more and more people know about powerlifting, especially now. I think there's a lot going on with, like, sponsorships and stuff that have helped it grow and grow with companies like Gymshark, MyProtein, and things like that. But what we're doing is we are these people's entry into powerlifting. We are the representatives, and I would like to think that you and I are positive representations of the sport, and we are putting forward a representation or an image that powerlifting should have.
I hope so. I hope so. That's what we're trying to do anyway. And something that has made me feel very good was, say, at national championships, the positive kind of reception that we had from people coming up and saying, oh my God, I loved the podcast. And one of the things that is particularly cool to me is the age discrepancy of people that have come up, whether it's someone in their, like, 50s coming up, someone's dad coming up and introducing themselves and talking, or a sub-junior lifter, like that. That kind of span of people, that's, you know, it's like a smell the roses kind of moment. It's cool, and I hope that we just continue staying on that path, trying to just be ourselves, but try to be any sort of positive influence that we can on the powerlifting community and whatnot.
It feels like a way that we have access to giving back as well. Like, I don't know how many ways there are to give back, but it is something that we can access. So it's like, you know. And
again, it feels like it was just the right fit, like the right thing to do. I remember saying it after even organizing the first one, because it's something totally out of the ordinary that we haven't done before. Obviously, we talk in podcast settings, but this is public speaking. It's in front of a group of people that you've never seen before, and you're presenting whatever it is that we weren't given a brief of what we were meant to present. It was just, do you want to talk to the students? And then it was on us to be like, fucking, what can we say that will hopefully be valuable or important or insightful or potentially beneficial? What can they take away from us speaking? So there was, again, like there was hesitation in the beginning of like, fucking, do we even do this? Do we say yes? Do we say no? But there was just this sense of, yeah, do it. Like it just feels like the right thing to do. And after the first one, the reception that we've got again from whether it's other people in the powerlifting community that work in a school or are connected to a school being like, hey, well, would you come in and speak to our students? A school reached out to me to say the students approached them to say, could you bring these people in? Cool. There was a person in Carlo or something who was like, I'll speak to my school to see if you guys can come in. There was another school that was just connected to the first school that we did that then is asking us to come in as well. My old school presumably will get onto your old school as well. The amount that has kind of, it's created a web from that first one. It just feels like it makes sense. It feels like the right fit. It feels like the right thing to do. It feels like it's a suitable role for us. It doesn't feel like there's any resistance anymore. It feels like something that we can just launch headfirst into.
Yeah. It's our equivalent of volunteering, perhaps.
Yeah.
You know, we might not ref a comp. So if you're listening to this and you are either a secondary level student, well, to be honest, I don't like school is school, but we have been looking at senior level, like 4 through 6 years.
Yeah. So like for anyone who's not actually in Ireland, that is 15, 16 to 18-year-olds.
So if you're in those years in Ireland in secondary school and you would like us to come into your school and do a talk,
reach out, shoot one of us a DM, talk to, if you can pass on to an email, say it to whatever the year head.
Say it to your teacher, say it to your year head.
And then pass us on an email and we can get in touch. Because a few people have reached out to be like, is this something that would be possible to arrange? And I speak for myself, I think I speak for you as well. It's like, that's absolutely something that we are down to do. So any suggestions, any requests, absolutely come our way.
Let us know. Or if you, alternatively, if you're not a student, if you work in a school and you want us to come in, your teacher, whatever you are, let us know. So before we move on to anything else you have or questions, one thing I want to do, I don't know why it came to mind, I think maybe someone's came up on my YouTube feed, is that I want to do like a 10k cal challenge with Andrew, but then it just bridges into like content that we can make as True Andrews One Barbell on the topic of going to schools. It's like, what else can we do? Of course, we're always going to be doing the podcast. That's just a given for us too. But if there's anything else you want to see us do, any challenges is like, seems too narrow of a term. Just like anything that you see other people do that you would like to see us do or try. We'd be willing to mess around, find out.
Gonna get some interesting requests on that one. So long as it is PG-13, please.
Yeah, sure. And there's a lot of comps to go to next year, so he needs to pay.
Hey, I'm not gay, but $20 is $20. Anyway, right, I suppose we'll answer some questions. I said that when we were talking about how many people go to Worlds and being a little bit wary of saying that we compete at elite level and whatnot, it ties into this question here. And it is along the lines of what percentage of lifters do you think make it to the world stage?
Whoa. Well, that's an objective measure. I'm sure you can measure that.
Yeah, open powerlifting somewhere.
Man.
Okay, if we break it down, there's maybe like 20 something people in the like middle-ish weight classes. 20 to 25. I suppose there's age categories as well. I'm not going to try to do the maths. So on the amount of powerlifting, 1%.
1% seems like a reasonable thing. 1 in 100 lifters.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, but then like you could say, okay, Ireland sends more lifters than team X, Y, and Z. So
yeah,
that's also a thing.
I'm just trying to think the amount of people. So for like reference at Junior European Championship. In the 93 kilo class, there might be like 20 people. In the 83 kilo class, there might be like 20, 25 people. So like that's kind of the numbers. When it gets to like the more fringe classes, I think it's a little bit less. Now, maybe that might change at an international level that there will be people selected from each, but it's not a lot of people. It's not, in fairness, it's not a lot of people. But then I don't know how many people are in powerlifting in general. Do you know something that surprised me?
What?
And I don't know if this is sensitive information or if I'm revealing something. In the Irish Powerlifting Federation, I heard supposedly we only have 700-ish members.
In Irish PF?
Yeah.
Okay.
700. And then you consider, say, in like 2021, we came third. The male team came third at Junior World Championships. It's pretty good. That's a pretty
good.
successful team.
Pretty
If
cool.
we only have 700 members.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if I should go into it. The reason that I know about that is it was around discussions of if we can get to a position where powerlifting gets funding in Ireland. And supposedly and again, I don't know if this is sensitive information, but I don't think I'm saying anything I shouldn't say. Supposedly one of the requirements for us to get to a position where we can get funding is having 1,500 members within the sport. That's one of the things. Now, from someone who I was talking to, they said they're going to see if they can get that waived because we meet essentially all of the other criteria. Crazy. I didn't realize that we were, because that puts the 700 number into perspective of it's not a lot of people.
Man, I wonder, someone else will be listening to this. I haven't thought this through before, but how do you increase members that sharply?
So,
do you like decrease the price?
No, I think I was having a discussion and then I think I would be erring on the side of just don't say that because there is potentially some loopholes. So there is loopholes.
Oh, okay.
But we won't go into it. I'll tell you. That makes it sound like it's dodgy either. It's not dodgy, but it's it would be great if we got to a position where powerlifting was a recognised sport because on that, this actually happened to me and it's happened to multiple people that I know. There are things like scholarship opportunities for third level education in Ireland for like whatever sport if you're competing at a high level. When I was leaving secondary school, my school was offering grants for sports as well. This was leading into my first European Championships as a sub-junior. They were offering like $2,000 or something, which would have covered like my coaching for 6 months or whatever it is and my fees to go fly over and my accommodation and whatnot. But powerlifting is not a recognised sport in Ireland through Sport Ireland, whatever the overseeing body is. I have friends who say they're doing a master's or something along those lines, and there's scholarship opportunities in the third level education where they would have, say, like all the fees for the master's waived. So they could be saving like 10 grand or something. I'm just making up the figures. But they get to the final hurdle. The people say, we want to give you this scholarship, but we can't because your sport isn't recognised by Sport Ireland. Oh my goodness. So anyway, hopefully we can overcome that hurdle in the next 12 months, hopefully even shorter than that. Again, I don't think I'm saying anything I shouldn't say, but that would be phenomenal for the opportunities that the sport could get if we could get funding from whatever, I don't know if it's from like a government agency or whatever it is. If we could get funding and more money involved in powerlifting, more backing, that would be amazing. Because it costs money to run all these things. Say, all these competitions, national championships, it was phenomenal, but it costs a lot of money. Live streams cost money, renting the venues cost money, the setup, the tear down all the equipment, transporting the equipment. It all costs a lot of money and the money's got to come from somewhere. So hopefully that gets taken care of. And that would be massive for powerlifting in Ireland, I would say. Right. Anyway, can't remember where we were starting. Oh, this is a good question. Where is it? Top 3 books that you've read that changed the way you think.
I don't read a lot of books.
That's crazy. Is that actually your answer?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I thought you were meant to be the smart one.
Yeah, I read studies. I mean, I don't. Yeah.
So, for myself, I would say hands down, the most influential book that I have read is, can't remember the name, The 4 Agreements. That's the one. The 4 Agreements. I've actually talked about it on this a few times. I don't even know if I would recommend the book. All I will say is it has been the most influential on my way of thinking, the way that I interact with the world. My mindset, the way that I think, that book has probably been the most important for me, for rules essentially to live by. I'll let you go read it so you can figure it out yourself. Then, see, that one stands like head and shoulders above the rest. I would say another one that has been quite useful or significant in the way that I, again, interact with the world, the way that I think, probably, why are you laughing?
Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
That's the last book you read, is it? That's why it came to mind.
You gave it to me last week.
Fuck's sake. Yeah, you got me. No, would be How to Win Friends and Influence People. Bit of a crazy name, okay? I have a story about that book. I did work experience in a gym when I was 15, 16. You do it when you are in what's called transition year in Ireland. You get to just go to a place that you would be somewhat interested in working in. And you kind of just like shadow. You just like stand around and just see kind of what goes on in that place of work. So I went to a gym and it was like a friend of the family, sort of, who owned this gym. And I'm trying to find the nicest way to word it. The guy is probably one of the most abrasive people I have ever met. Unkind and rude. That would be, they would be the words I would use to describe him. Just not a particularly nice guy. For example, the first time that I went there, now again, this work experience stuff, it basically just replaces like a school day. You would go to this place for the typical amount of time that you would have been in school. I'm pretty sure there's rules and regulations around that. So school for me starts at 8:30 in the morning. I'm pretty sure I even showed up earlier. I showed up like 8 a.m. to the gym. And the first thing my first introduction to this guy is he's looking down his nose at me. He scoffs and goes, "What time do you call this?" He goes, "I start my day at 4:30. And I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, that is how the relationship started off. And there was no, tell me maybe come at 4:30 and then I can be there. Anyway, he was training his mum in the first session that we were there. He was like fat shaming his mum. He was like, "This is why you're so overweight. You're going to die early. You're so lazy. You're this, you're that." Almost unbelievable. Like you would think I'm lying. How could someone conduct themselves that way? Anyway, that was the case. In his office, on the desk, I saw this book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I thought it was hilarious. I was like, that's, first of all, a crazy name for a book that you need a book on how to make friends. And obviously it must be shit because it doesn't work for him. Anyway, it is, man, this must be like 8 years ago. And it still stands out in my mind the way that this guy carried on. Anyway, 6 years later, I stumble across this book again and I start listening to it and I give it a chance. I would say it is a very useful book. It's shaped my mindset quite a lot. Just in terms of how you conduct yourself and how you interact with other people, how you develop people skills. Stuff like the best way to win an argument is to not have one. Things along those lines. Take a genuine interest in other people. Oftentimes people like talking about themselves more than anything else. Those kind of general things. Now, that being said, I don't even remember a lot of what was in the book. I don't think you should.
Yeah, that's the thing with some, like, with information and explicit information is whether or not you remember exactly how it was stated word for word. It's
you absorb.
You integrate the information into your understanding, and that's
So that's what I was going to say is I think that's what needs to happen as well. I don't think with books you should necessarily be studying them either.
You can, you could, but not necessarily.
Particularly with one like this as well, where it is around like interpersonal communication skills. You don't want to be having a conversation with you and being like, take genuine interest, ask question about himself. You don't want to be trying to go through a checklist of this is how you should communicate. It is more so you take on the anecdotes and the stories and whatnot, and you start to just conduct yourself in a more friendly, more open, more your people skills develop and get better.
So do you, sorry to intervene, but do you interrupt? I'm typing too much. Do you only listen or do you read?
Listen, I find audiobooks just resonate a lot better with me. I don't know if it's just reading, I find it difficult and it's slower. So that's one of the other things as well is I actually listen to
You
audiobooks.
can barely read. So I can imagine how slow it is, man. When you're sat with your mom and she's like, that's interview.
Fuck off!
Go on.
Yeah, so I listen to audiobooks on 2.5 times speed. So I can. So I don't know if it is autism. My brother takes the piss out of me like crazy. I'll even watch like funny stuff, like comedy things in
Man,
2 times speed.
you need to stop saying that. Andrew nearly was had an argument with myself and Alana trying to explain why he's autistic. And I had to explain the diagnostic criteria for ASD.
Okay, come on. We don't mean it in the actual sense of the word, brother. Come on, it's 2024. Grow up. Okay?
You can be what I want to be.
Yeah, no, fuck it. Anyway. Yeah, 2.5 times speed on audiobooks, and then YouTube only goes up to 2 times speed. So I was trying to download a Chrome extension where I could speed it up more.
What does this life come to, man?
It doesn't work. It doesn't work with YouTube anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I'm reading, the length of time it takes me to read something as opposed to an audiobook. Now, there could be an argument of perhaps you're going to digest it more and you have a longer amount of time to ruminate on a specific topic or a thought. My outlook is I can read 5 books. Like I can listen to 5 books in the amount of time it would take me to read one. So yeah, that's what I do. I like to listen to those. And I would say the third one maybe, I actually don't even know if I have listened or read the book, Extreme Ownership, but I have listened to so much of Jocko that I don't even remember if I've listened to the book itself explicitly, but I've absorbed so much information that, like, say his podcast, I think there must be 500 episodes, for example, and a lot of them are 3 to 3.5 hours. Again, on 2.5 times speed, I think I must have listened to probably 300 episodes. So you can do the maths of 300 times 3 hours. I've so much.
Like the way you kind of like threaten me with that math. So it's like, you can do the math and say,
Man,
300 hours. Do it.
I'm not doing it on camera, brother. This is going down in history. Okay? I'm not putting myself out there like that, okay? You can do the math.
Yeah.
How many days of listening that is? It's a lot of days of Jocko talking. I'm not even doing it on a calculator in case I fuck it up.
Oh my God, that is a lot of Jocko.
There's a lot of Jocko. Yeah. So the idea of extreme ownership and yeah, that is quite useful for me. That's something that I try to fall back on quite a bit. And again, even with all 3 of those books, a lot of them are kind of about like personal development and whatnot. You're not always going to be perfect with all of them, and you just try your best. You try to absorb as much of it and put in place as much of it as you can. Yeah, they would be 3 books that were particularly influential for me.
2 things I'll hit you with, having listened to those, is 1, though I don't read a lot, I do listen. So I can imagine, I was imagining things that I've listened to or watched that have felt like the equivalent of reading a informative book. And as you kept going, I realized that we hit that point where it was like, okay, you don't need to memorize the whole thing. It's just what you're taking from it that's important at the time. And that is very similar to a podcast. I don't remember exactly what Jocko said or what, this guest on Modern Wisdom said, but it was what I took from it at the time.
The feeling
that informed my understanding of the world, even if just by 0.001%, that is incredible. And that's the same thing I would get from a book. Now, I am not saying books are bad, nor is it better to listen or to read. Well, all I'm saying is I can relate to the books through podcasts. And I think podcasts, as we're doing one right now, are such a cool resource that was not very popular 10 years ago. They were around 10 years ago. Were they around 20 years ago? I don't even know. Maybe like radio or whatever is the equivalent. Yeah. But I definitely sound so out of touch there. I don't know. We'll find out.
I think so. I think you're right.
I'll ask my dad. But so then when I was thinking back, I was like, well, there's always podcasts that when you listen to them, you have this like profound, whoa.
Yeah.
it hits you. It's like, whoa, that was a quote, or what they just talked about was great, or I just listened to that whole 2 hours and I feel informed on this topic or about this view of life. And I think combined with the way I've learned to like understand other people's lives and not impart my own understanding is like I can just absorb through podcasts, and it's similar, not the same, but similar to reading a book. So that's what I get from those.
Are there any podcasts that stand out?
Just listen to, I know it's a good podcast when I say it to someone else. The Chris Bumstead podcast.
I was going to say on Modern Wisdom, Chris Williamson.
Man, what a guy.
Amazing. He was like the foundation of because I can't remember who it was with. I think it was like an old Modern Wisdom one that he had done. That was the first time I'd been exposed to that. Like, you don't need to be like Michael Jordan to be a champion. You don't need to want to kill everyone else. You can be afraid of losing. You can think about losing. You can be okay with losing. That was the first time I'd ever been exposed to that. And yeah, Chris Bumstead has had I don't even think I follow him on Instagram. Like, I don't know. I don't watch bodybuilding. I don't watch any of the Mr. Olympia stuff. But as a person in the 3 hours that he has recorded in the few episodes that he's done, the wisdom that he has imparted was significant and very influential on myself as well.
He's really good at reflecting on how he feels.
Yeah.
He even the if I was to just like paraphrase what he says as like, it's okay to cry. It's okay to cry. You can only do your best. And his interpersonal, his sharing of his interpersonal experiences with his wife, with his friends, things like that is so valuable to listen to.
Yeah.
Banger.
Yeah. Modern wisdom in general.
Modern wisdom in general.
Yeah.
I really enjoy.
Yeah.
I would dare say he's overtaken Diary of a CEO. I don't love listening to Diary of a CEO.
Yeah, I feel like it's a little bit too polarizing.
Polarizing, whereas this Modern Wisdom is just Chris talking. He's not changing what he's saying.
Yeah.
I do enjoy listening to Andrew Huberman. He is a neuroscientist as well. So I feel like I can relate and want to, and then I'm a little bit inspired to listen. Jocko is good to listen to.
Yeah.
And then just to throw this in, not that I took anything profound from it, but it's just an example of how you can listen to 2 hours of a conversation, or on 2.5 times speed, like 10 minutes of a conversation.
Hell yeah,
Matthew McConaughey, did you listen to that?
Yeah,
that was cool. I like listening to that. Because it also reminded me, and as I go forward with my life, is you don't have to, when you're listening to someone and appreciating what they're saying, you don't have to believe or want to be everything they say. You can enjoy someone's differing opinion to your own as well. It doesn't have to be right or wrong. All you have to do is all I do is listen and try to separate myself and understand them for what they are, and then recognize that I'm separate, and the differences and similarities, and view those and just enjoy what they've experienced, even if I don't like them.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Very good. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot to gain from that format of a 2-3 hour discussion and conversation. You get insight into these extremely successful people and how they live their lives, and I think it kind of forces you to be your authentic self, because it's probably pretty hard and maybe that's not necessarily true. I'm sure you could put on an act for 3 hours, but if you're speaking for that long, there's probably going to be cracks that show in that act. You probably get a pretty good feel for a person if you hear them talk for that long, and you touch on such a wide variety of topics as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of podcasts, and that's why you listen to them super quick, so you can listen to more of them.
I will then add the second thing that I was going to ask you, and way less important or relevant, is the 3 books you listed were fiction is... What's the difference between fiction and non-fiction?
One's real, one's...
Which one?
What do you mean?
Like, fiction is?
Fiction's fake.
So yours were non-fiction.
Were you at... Are you trying to confirm that? Or are you trying to catch me out?
I was confirming because I did not say the wrong one.
I thought you were trying to catch me out. You're calling me stupid.
Oh, no. I didn't want to say all your books were non-fiction, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
So all your books are non-fiction. So is there any fictitious? Like, she didn't specify in that question.
Yeah.
But you went to non-fiction. Do you consume any fictitious literature or media, full stop?
Not in the form of books or audiobooks, but...
Why?
I think I view them as more informative or educational based. Whereas if I was to be involved in non-fiction, it would generally be through like a movie,
But I think
or a show. Or no, in fiction it would be. Sorry,
Just
I fucked it
slipped
up.
up. That's
Yeah, I
what's
did
afraid
it. I
of.
did it. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
If I was watching fiction, it would be like a movie or a TV show, more likely, because I've probably through that like visual medium you can convey more. Now, maybe that's one of the things that people would say is good about books, because it promotes you to use your imagination based on how the words are written. You can come up with your own story for that in your head. For me, it's, I don't know, I've just never. That being said, when I was younger, when I was a kid, I would read a lot, and there would have been books like that. But that was one of the things that I found difficult, because they would be describing a character and say it's something that isn't actually in, say, like TV and movies, or TV and movies. You have to come up with what this character looks like. And I would always find that hard. I don't know if my imagination is just a little bit cooked, but I would be like, I can't imagine what this person is meant to look like, and maybe there is no what they're meant to look like, but I wanted to know what it was like, and I'd be trying to look it up to be like, what does the freaking person look like? And I wouldn't be able to do it. So I don't know if that's a limitation with my own imagination or the way that I think or I perceive stuff. But yeah, I would generally, if I was consuming like a book or an audiobook, it would be non-fiction.
Yes.
I have to think about that again.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Never got into like Harry Potter's or anything like that.
Nor did I. We both realised, because we did the talk in the library the other day, that we both read Skullduggery Pleasant.
Yeah,
was
that's
cool.
the one where I'm meant to imagine what the characters look like, and I'm not gonna fucking know.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was referring to when I was talking about that. Yeah. So anyway, they would be pretty useful books. The ones that I have read.
Do you want to bang out another question?
Yeah. There's like 30 or something here, and I don't even know.
We'll do a Q&A episode next.
Yeah. Is there any that stands out to you? There was one that was how do you main strength while cutting to a lower weight class, and I feel like we spent a decent amount of time talking about cutting in general.
You don't.
Yeah. Unless there's anything that jumps out there, I'd say we can do a separate Q&A. There's one about the nastiest injury you've had, but we've talked about that a lot. There's a very small one, and maybe I'll just take this opportunity. This I think only relates to myself, but why do you let the bar roll backwards while deadlifting instead of keeping it in place? I don't mean to. Well, I didn't mean to when I started doing it. I think it was just a natural progression or evolution of my technique as I started getting bigger and my belly started getting in the way. If I can summarize it as best as possible, I found that when the bar was a little bit too close, I felt like I couldn't get into a good starting position. When I stood a little bit further away from the bar, it felt like it was easier to access a good starting position. And then I would look back at the videos and then realize, oh, the bar is kind of rolling back into me a little bit. It was like the bar rolling was that's just a byproduct of me trying to find a good starting position. It's not that I'm gonna start rolling the bar in because I think that will be better. So yeah, that's that. Anyway, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I'm happy with that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We'll leave there?
Yeah.
I think want to promo our shit again? If you want coaching, go to evopowerlifting.com.
Yeah.
Or send me a DM.
Send me a DM on Instagram, Andrew Rowe, _Odyssey.
Yeah. If you want us to come to your school, send me a DM.
Yeah.
Send me an email for your school to get in touch. And I think that's that.
That is that.
Enjoy the next episode, which the episode number is going to be wrong.
Yes.
And then we will see you guys soon. Actually, another thing, I think we're going to try to do these more often. I think we're going to try to pump out some more frequent content. Now, I'm not committing to a schedule. In terms of that, you're a very busy guy. I'm also very busy.
But we'll see, can we do them more often? What that looks like.
Yeah, that's the plan. That's the plan, I think. Hopefully these will be coming at you more frequently. We have plans for the beginning of next year, the end of this year, hopefully perhaps as well. As you mentioned, making other forms of content with the two of us. Yeah. There's a lot of exciting things on the horizon. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. And we will catch you in the next one.